I mean, isn't that like step one in AA? Admit you have a problem.
Yep,
So
100%. Yeah, not only admit it, but I mean, facing it head on can come in a lot of different forms. Doing it on
mhm.
this platform, in my opinion, can be one of the most courageous. Granted, your face isn't out there, but to speak that out loud on this platform without getting too mystical
Yeah,
uh, is that's a big deal because the amount of people that are listening. You know, what risk you're taking.
yeah.
That's not a light decision.
No, and he did it, and I think maybe that is, and some would say that's a cry for help, and that's fine. Maybe that's exactly what it is. But at the same time, it's not a light decision, and that's why we say it a lot. We applaud the callers who have the courage to call on the show, and we don't judge the ones who don't. And I just, something else he said. So, like, I told him this, and I've told you this before. I don't know why, but I've surrounded myself in my life with a lot of people in recovery, starting with my own two parents, a lot of uncles, but also a lot of people that I've worked with. I mean, we work in the industry that is wrought with people who are alcoholics or drug addicts in the radio and music industry. But I was working with a guy back in like 2016, and he actually said to me something that James said a minute ago. He said, and he was sober for like 13 years, and this dude was an addict. I mean, you could tell this dude was an addict because like he gave up alcohol, but he would just pop these little candies. And it's like he has such an addict personality. And he said, the thing about it, Michael, is when you're trying to drink all the time, it's hard. It's really hard. And I never really thought of it that way, but you're kind of right. Whether you're like hiding it from people or you're trying to navigate conversations while you're drunk, or God forbid you're driving. I mean, like it's actually hard to be, it's hard to live that way. Yes. I mean, fundamentally it's hard to live that way, but like, it's actually kind of hard. And then it's like, well, if you flip the script and you go the other way, it's like, oh, well, that's kind of easy then. So,
Yeah, I mean, not only that, but booze is one of those things that it's an interesting drug and it's an interesting form of addiction because it is legal and it is everywhere. So it's
yeah.
very easy to get your hands on it. But in that same vein, that in and of itself can almost become an excuse to keep feeding that addiction because you're like, well, it's just everywhere. It's always in my face. How am I
Mm.
supposed to stop? And I sent this sentiment to James, and I was like, "Yeah, man, but I did it. Other people have done it. You can't BS a BSer, and if you want to stop, you can stop. And the fact that it's everywhere just means it's going to take a little more grit, a little more steel, and a little more fire on your part to put it down. But I
Yeah.
promise when you do, that old adage, as dumb as it is true, man. Some of the brightest diamonds are forged under the worst amounts of pressure. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and my opinion about being an addict is almost like a cheat code to life if you can break out of it because you live so long in the bitter that when you finally get to the other side and you're sober, the sweet is way more sweeter than normal people that don't have an addiction will ever get to taste
I actually
because
I had that thought. I don't know, probably like in the last few days. And I was reflecting on that conversation that you and I had maybe a couple months ago about that very thing is like, it's almost like as strange as it sounds. Cause I've had moments and periods in my life where I'm like, oof, I think I might be drinking a little too much, but I don't know that I wouldn't classify, I think it would be a disservice. I don't want to say this. I'm not an addict. It's just not.
Mhm.
I've been dealt other cards. Addiction is not one of them. At least I don't think. Anyway, but it's a gift. Like if you're an addict and you can break free from those chains and to see life, because only an addict can see life from the perspective of I was once ruled by this thing and now I'm not. But yet you always live. That's why they say you're always in recovery. Is that you always live? I mean, when I'm another thing I've heard an addict say is, one drink is too many, 1,000 is not enough.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And it's like, because you can never have one drink. You can never be at a party and be like, I'll just have a martini. No, because like that's it. Like it's done at that point.
That's how I know you're not an addict, by the way, is because your first drink was martini to go with. Not straight whiskey, not like the hardest, let me get, let me get that 151. You're like, my martinis are just too, they're too rough.
Hey, I'm sure there's plenty of addicts who are
No, you're
drunk on
right.
martini.
You're right.
Okay, but yeah, that is my go-to cocktail. Is
Yeah.
like, all right, but like I can have one or two, or sometimes I'm going, crazy three. But like, but then I feel like crap the next day, and I'm reminded of like,
Yeah.
I don't love that feeling.
I
You know,
remember his conversation brought up I got the same feeling that I did. I remember when we first started talking, and I couldn't put the booze down, even though I saw the destruction in its wake.
mhm.
And I remember having a conversation with you, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but I wasn't talking to you about booze. It was just like another addiction that I had, and it was something simple. I actually think it was about sweets, because at this point you did not yet know my love for guava pastries, and you just
Mhm.
had always seen me eating trash, like whether it was candy bars or guava, like it was just always something sweet, and you were like, homie, like, you can eat other things, bro. And like the sweets may even be better the next time you come back to them. And there was like that like light bulb went off. And it was like
Mhm.
all of those little things, those little cliches that people had said just like clicked into place. And I was like, oh damn, what he's actually saying is if I can do the self work and I can have the discipline to sit myself down and tell myself life can be sweeter without having sweets all the time, whether it's booze, pot, Coke, pill, whatever, it can be that much better on the other side. And then, like I said, like that was it. That was the click. That was the turning point for me where I was like, I get it. I understand why this is like a lifelong thing for people if they decide to let it really grip them. Um, and I understand that it's a self work thing. And I know that's a cliche, but it's the goddamn truth, man. Like
Oh
you got
yeah,
to sit there with yourself. You learn, and that's part of the cheat code. I think is because when you get out on the other side, you've done so much self worth that now you're sitting from a whole new vantage point, and all of a sudden all this anger that you had for the situation that you were in is turned to compassion and love, and you're like, damn, I had to love myself so hard just so that the voice in my head would stop telling me to grab a drink, that
yep,
now when I see other people going through it, I just can't help but do anything other than just be like, what can I do to help? I know you're not going to want to listen to me right now, but I'll
right.
sit here with you. And whenever we can get to that next phase, because you're so close to that next phase, when all it takes is one word from somebody, and all of a sudden you go, oh my God, that's it. That was the key.
Yep.
Like you're right there. So I'm just going to sit with you. And maybe that's it. That's all it'll take.
Yeah, and you've probably noticed and observed in people in your life, and I know I have, is people in recovery. Yeah, man, I mean, they're battle tested, that's for sure. But there's a, I don't know, man. There's a love. There's a lack of judgment. There's definitely a lack of judgment because a lot of people who are sober are like, "Phew," they have stories to tell.
Oh,
Um, and but like there's like, and again, you're right. It's a cheat code, and I'm not wishing addiction struggles on people because it's a real thing, man. We're not addiction counselors. We're just two dudes who talk about our feelings. Um, but talking about your feelings is actually not a bad thing to do to get to potentially the root of why you have addiction. Whether I mean, I hate to say it, but if James is like, man, I'm alone, I'm alone, I'm alone, I'm alone. Yeah, man, you're just drinking just to get through the loneliness,
mm-hmm.
and it's not like, oh, well, go find a friend and that solves your problem.
But that's the
But
thing, like you said, like that's a thing. You could still find a friend and still drink. Like that's why I think it clicked so much with what you said about the sweets, was that it was devoid of any other circumstance other than having to sit with myself alone and really, really pinpoint what it is that keeps me in this place. Because I was at that point where I was like, okay, I can't blame anybody else anymore. I can't blame anybody else. I
right,
can't blame the substance anymore, because I am continuously putting myself back in this situation. It's my fault. And then once I got to that, I was like, all right, well,
Now
damn.
what? Now what are you gonna
Exactly.
do? Yeah.
Exactly. And I had, I had friends and always friends and family. I was lucky enough to have a good support system of people that constantly loved me. But like I said, and that's to me, like, that's the paradox. That's how the universe works is it's a random conversation about guava pastries and payday bars that was the click. That was the
Mhm.
click. I didn't need a grand gesture. I didn't need some big ornate display or an intervention. It was just a simple talk between friends where my buddy was like, "Put the sweets down, fatty. It's too much," And I was like, "Damn, all right, all right, all right, all right, all right."